to the What Bitcoin Did podcast.
Hi there, how are you all? Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast, where you get to hear from the best minds in Bitcoin and crypto. I'm your host, Peter McCormack, and this week I have an interview with Brendan Eich, the creator of JavaScript and founder of Brave and the Basic Attention Token. But before I talk about this, I have a message from my show sponsors. Firstly, I want to welcome back BlockFi as an advertiser. So, would you like to use your crypto without selling it? Whether you're paying off student loans, buying a house, or starting a business, BlockFi helps crypto investors use their Bitcoin, Ether, and Litecoin without selling it. Backed by Mike Novogratz, BlockFi is the leading crypto to USD lender in the US, servicing over 45 states with interest rates as low as 7.9%. And they have a special offer for listeners of my podcast. Sign up at blockfi.com/whatbitcoindid to get $25 in free crypto added to customer collateral loans under $10,000, or $50 in free crypto added to customer collateral loans for over $10,000. And applying only takes less than 2 minutes. Next up, I want to tell you about Make It Rain. If you need help marketing your company or project, you won't do better than working with these guys. They are the best in the business for SEO, paid, predictive, and social media. And I'm not just saying this. I've worked with them for the marketing of my podcast, and a funny story, they even came up with the name. And best of all, they accept payments in crypto. They're based in LA, they're servicing clients worldwide, and they have a special offer for listeners of my podcast. If you mention What Bitcoin Did when you reach out to them, they will provide you with a free SEO audit. So to find out more, head over to makeitrainusa.com. So on to my interview with Brendan. I've wanted to interview him for a while. I'm a big fan of the Brave browser. I've been using it religiously for the last few weeks. I think it's fantastic. I did have questions over BAT, which is why I wanted to get him on. So yeah, this is an interview worth listening to. A warning though, there are some sound issues. Brendan called me walking between meetings, so you can hear the odd car in the background and some birds tweeting. I've done my best to engineer it all out. It's not ideal. I wish we'd have done it in person, but you know, it is what it is. So please do put up with that. If you've got any questions about the interview, feel free to get in touch. You can email me on hello@whatbitcoindid.com. And if you want to support the show, there's a section on my website, www.whatbitcoindid.com, which will tell you what you can do. Okay, hope you enjoy the interview. Hi, Brendan. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Okay, great. So there's kind of three things I want to talk about with you today. I want to talk about privacy, I want to talk about Brave, and I want to talk about BAT. I don't want to do too much of a long background. I think people know your rich history in the internet and that you created JavaScript. Was it like 10 days?
In May 1995, and then embedded it in Netscape 2 over the next 2.5 months, and then it shipped.
Right. Okay. So what it feels like is, when I look back at your history, when you founded Mozilla and were working on Mozilla, that was kind of a fight against Microsoft, and now with Brave, this is a fight against Google. Do I see that right?
Google is certainly a good example. People also are picking on Facebook a lot. Facebook's making itself easy to pick on through, I think, sticking to its guns too much. And doing things like, they took your phone number for securing your login, and then they used that for ad targeting. That was a mistake. So it's against the whole surveillance superpowers of modern ad tech and social media, which it ultimately also depends on advertising.
Right. And you obviously were kind of a key person during the early days of the internet. Are you seeing the growth in cryptocurrencies? Does that feel like a similar kind of time as when you're working on the early browsers?
It's in some ways similar. In some ways, it's quite different, because the early days of the web, people at first couldn't do secure transactions. Once they could, it quickly went to credit cards, and that made sense for lots of reasons. But it also meant it was centralized. There was an interchange charge. Fraud costs were put back on the merchant. So there were issues there that I think cryptocurrencies promised to relieve. I think that's the great thing about crypto, among others, is censorship resistance of blockchains and things like that. The flip side, I suppose, is if you're doing peer-to-peer messaging using blockchain, sort of based systems that are reaching consensus through some kind of protocol, it's harder. They tend to be slower to settle. There's ways to get around that. New chains coming out are super fast, but not really widely adopted yet. And decentralization has an intrinsic cost. You have to think differently, and most people still don't know the difference between a browser and a search engine. So it's not clear when all this stuff will become as usable as the web became rather quickly in the 90s. The browser was already out when Netscape made it even easier to use, and then added security for e-commerce through encryption. And people were used to some kind of a fat app you'd click in the user interface of. But the 10 blue links in the search page, or the clicking on a link, or having some kind of a web form you fill out, was not that far from the other metaphors that preceded it. The great thing about the web was that it got anybody to be able to talk to anybody else, put up a site, put up pictures of their cats, and even put up small shops that became big. See that kind of explosion with dApps would be interesting, but dApps are still very, very young.
Right, okay. And having worked in the internet industry for something like 30 odd years now, just before we start talking about Brave, from your lens, how have you seen the evolution of the internet, both good and bad?
Well, so networks tend, in any system, sort of in configuration space in biology, in biological systems, you get first place, second place winners, and they tend to take over. And maybe they do really well for a long time. They use their advantages in one field where they've prospered to take over others. Systems can get out of balance for a long time and stay out of equilibrium. People always assume equilibrium in science. It's really stupid. In economics, they assume everything's at or near equilibrium, and it's not. In physics and thermodynamics, it's very hard to study non-equilibrium systems, so it's understudied. But that's life is a non-equilibrium system, among other things. So there's a bunch we don't know, and it's hard to study, and you don't get necessarily fast rewards or tenure track as a researcher. This is true on computer networks. Computer networks, the easy money, and some of this is not easy to do. Let's not minimize the effort, but after Friendster and MySpace, Zuck, starting with the universities, had the right value propositions, the right time and place, and he got a bunch of people on board Facebook. And you could say, some people argue engagement's dropping now, but he used that great power with the main app to acquire other apps, Instagram, WhatsApp. So it's just sort of like taking over adjacent systems, or some sort of partial symbiosis in biology. You tend to have first and second place winners perpetuate themselves. This is not always for the best for society or for the whole ecosystem. And I think that's happening now. We're living through it. You're seeing regulators, and especially in Europe and other places, India, Brazil, California, are reacting to this. People are quite upset because a lot of people believe that Facebook, as sort of a psy-op platform, had undue effects on elections, and it could have. It's hard to prove a negative, but it's just a sort of has a dark side to it, right? It's not just about whether it tilted the election. It's people get mobbed or trolled. They get ads they don't like. They get malware distributed as fake ads, ransomware, in fact. So there's a problem that's not being solved rapidly enough by the big powers who are making tons of money. Because they're public companies, they can't really risk their profit. They can't do something materially adverse to their stock price, and so they're kind of stuck. You see, lots of talking to politicians. You'll see some sort of cosmetic changes around the edges, but real reform may have to come through innovations like blockchain and other things, like what I'm working on, more than through self-reform or self-regulation, or even the regulators who may not know what to do. They just know what they don't want.
Okay. So I want to talk about Brave. I migrated to Brave around 6 weeks ago. I did an interview with Ricardo from Monero, and I'd also read an article by Matthew Green about why he was quitting Chrome. So I ended up deleting all my data from Google, deleted Chrome, mobile and desktop, and migrated to Brave, and also to DuckDuckGo. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my experience, and then obviously you can chip in and feedback. So the first download of Brave, I struggled with the UX, but then I migrated to the beta, and I've used the beta since, and I found with the UX on that, because it's a Chromium-based build, that I just love it. It crashes occasionally, but it's not it is a beta, so I accept that. So what was the idea on doing the Chromium build?
We were always based on the Chromium engine, except on iOS, where Apple requires you to use their engine. And, I built web engines for 20 years, and I'm glad not to be in the business. So we're happy to use that back-end engine of open source that renders, the pixels from HTML and JavaScript and CSS. But what we did with the beta that you started using is the front end. We were using a different approach than what the Chromium open source uses. And we switched from that different approach to essentially Chromium's front end. But we had to remove a bunch of Google surveillance, frankly, things that tied into Google accounts and sync, but also things that signaled Google sites for various reasons. Not always clear why. Some of this is an attempt, like all big browsers make, to do telemetry and report faults, sometimes not with identifying the user, but with reporting the fault so it can be fixed, which is a good purpose. But sometimes we couldn't tell what these things were doing. And the code was fairly festooned with this stuff. So part of the effort in switching over to the Chromium front end, besides adding the Brave shields and the basic attention token and integrating them in a way that's top of browser, easy to use, part of the effort was ripping out the Google stuff.
Right, okay. And the background to Brave itself, why did that project start? Where did that come from for you?
I really wanted to have a better experience myself and my family too. The ads on sort of the mobile web in particular, but all websites for all versions, for all kinds of viewports, tablet and desktop as well, I felt the drag on the network from all the tracking scripts. And anybody who's looked at this realizes that it's not just the visible, but it's the invisible that costs you. Like the tracking scripts add up to such a hit in traffic, request and response, trying to measure you before the ad is placed, and then afterwards to confirm you saw the ad, that it can take up to $23 a month, according to one study, half your data plan cost if you're paying that to your data plan. And you end up running the battery because the radio is the number 2 battery consumer, or if it's bursting on a lot, it can be number 1, screen is dimmer. And so all these direct costs on the user. And of course, then there's the risk of getting ransomware from an ad on your PC. It's not trivial risk. So, speed, battery life, the network bill, the data plan bill, and the clutter and annoyance and, creepy feeling of being stalked by ads that retarget you to remind you to buy something you already bought, or that you decided not to buy, or you're still making your mind up about it. Only in the last case might retargeting be considered productive. It might remind you to get something you were going to get, or it might just drive you to get an ad blocker and opt out of the entire system if it's a good ad blocker. So when I saw how the ecosystem had this problem and the users were feeling the pain, I thought, why not build something as a user that would be helpful? And then having defended the user, what can we do for the creator? Many users are creators too. And of course, there are big publishers. Notionally, ad blocking hurts the economics of the big publisher. Even if the user never clicks on an ad, a lot of ads are sold on a so-called cost per impression or cost per millennium of impressions, 1,000 impressions basis. So a fraction of a cent for you seeing the ad, allegedly. And so an ad blocker deprives the site of that revenue. And if it's a site you like and you want to support it, how do you make up for that lost revenue? That's not easy. And that's why we got into cryptocurrency, built a prototype with Bitcoin, and then did the basic attention token.
Okay, so we'll come on to the basic attention token, but I want to talk a little bit more about the ad blocking, because obviously the internet has been a really tough ride for publishers. They've had to switch to an entirely new business model. What do you think that publishers have got wrong?
I think what started out over 100 years ago with print media was a direct sales model, and you had like the famous case of Jude Wanamaker, ran a chain of department stores in Philadelphia, and he would get space in the local newspaper for his ads, and the editor of the newspaper could make the content in the ads not clash or be brand unsafe for Jude. And they could do a deal over a handshake, or they could have a contract paid on amount of space that was given up in each edition of the paper. For a run of N weeks for a catalog or a store promotion. That model works, and it still works on the web, but it's hard for most publishers to achieve on the web because the scale is so much greater. You're not just getting the local department store to advertise in the local paper. You're trying to get major brands, global brands, to reach audiences who they want to market to across millions of sites. Now, you can't do direct sales across millions of sites. It doesn't work. So the big sites do direct sales, and they make really good money, and they can often control the quality of the ads. They may use the Google ad server and ad exchange to put the ad in, but they do the deal themselves. What everybody else, and even bigs do this to fill the rest of their ad space, uses is called programmatic advertising. And this is the automated solution. It's kind of a meaningless word. It means automated if it means anything. where ads are matched across many sites, maybe millions, based on tracking. So programmatic advertising depends on sort of mass surveillance of your behavior using third parties that set cookies on various sites and track you. Google had a search engine originally, you may recall, and it had a search ads business, very clean, kind of a direct sold first party ad experience, because the little text ads in the search page were separated from the organic content. They didn't try to mix them in or have people pay to put them in rank order where they didn't belong. And those ad results on the search result page could be good. Google did well with that. But if you didn't convert on them, they lost track of you. And I think that's why they started doing AdSense ads on blogs for bloggers. They made an ad product that could be embedded well and paid 68% of the revenue. Still going, still kind of a big, but not total part of their business. But if they lost you from the search pages and the AdSense ads, they had to get you another way, and they bought DoubleClick. DoubleClick was the Dart ad server in 2000. I think it predates that, and it was doing tracking. I remember DoubleClick in the 90s. I don't know the full history as well as I should, but there was a history from the invention of the cookie on, where very smart people just working on their own figured out how to do tracking across sites. So you have something called the cookie that is a little bit of storage in the browser for each domain. Let's simplify it to say domain name, like part of the web address, but only a certain part of it. That storage can be updated from the server at that domain. The cookie is sent back after it's been stored the first time and can be updated again. And it's sent for every request, not just for the page you're visiting, but for embedded elements. And that's where the tracking comes in. So you may have a cookie to remember that you logged into your bank, and you don't have to re-log in every time you go back or start your browser. Or maybe it's just a publisher site you pay for a paywall access to get to their premium content. Cookies are helpful. They cache for a short time, maybe for your bank it's too short, some authentication token based on your login credentials. And that's what they were designed for. But in that, let's say that publisher example with the premium content and the paywall, there can be a little one-by-one image. You don't even see it. It could be transparent. That image is requested separately over the hypertext transfer protocol. And a cookie for the image server's domain is set. It's sent back to the server, and the server can update it and send it in response. So every request gets a cookie, and that includes these embedded elements, and that's how tracking works. Think of that pixel and its little tiny image footprint as something you don't see, but the server for it gets that pixel embedded in thousands of sites. And you visit hundreds of those sites. Now that little image server can see you. If it doesn't recognize you the first time, it makes up a number, user ID 1234, sets it in the cookie, sends it back. Next time you go to a different site that embeds the same image, the cookie goes, there are various ways to do this, but the simplest case is it's the same image embedded a different way. The request can sort of tell the server how it was embedded, so it can tell you're on ESPN now, and previously you're on New York Times. So user 1234 now has a little dossier that's growing. It started out at New York Times, now it's at ESPN, and you go to 99 other sites, and it's got you tracked. And that is the basis for doing this automated ad system called programmatic advertising, which for most sites is the only way to go. They just don't have the sales force or the scale to do direct ad deals with brands like Procter & Gamble or the car makers.
Right, but if they're trying to monetize their platform, why is this fundamentally bad?
So, first of all, that intermediation layer through the trackers costs you. It means you're paying more than just the sales force or the IT staff that you would need to pay for your direct sales. You're paying the tracking partners, and there could be several of them. You're paying for what's called an ad exchange. Google runs the biggest. This is where, after the tracking assembles some kind of profile, there's a real-time bid process that tries to match a collection of users based on their dossiers as an ensemble audience that the advertiser wants to reach against a set of ad spaces on sites. That's called the inventory. And so this real-time exchange has to take its fee. Oh, and don't forget, there's also something called a demand-side platform that the advertisers use, or their agencies use, to sort of run their ad campaigns, measure them, try to make sure they're working well. often publishers use what's called a supply-side platform. Pretty soon you've got an alphabet soup of intermediaries, and they take, according to one study, 45% of the gross spend, but in reality it's more like 60 to 80%. And that's just too much. It leaves the publishers on a declining revenue footing, especially with fraud. I haven't talked about fraud yet, but fraud is out of control in this system. There is a researcher, adjunct professor at NYU named Augustin Fu, who studied this, and he estimates at least 20% of all the $100 billion being spent this year in the United States on digital ads is taken by fraud. And what is fraud? Fraud is fake sites and fake humans, bots, or fraud actors, if they're cheap enough in some part of the world, that seem to view ads or click on ads, but do it to get the ad revenue that would be due to the publisher, the real publisher, but they do it by faking the publisher. And they get paid. That's the amazing part. The advertiser puts money into the system, tries to, sort of weekly tries to make sure the money goes to the right places, goes to real people on real sites. But at the end of the day, the system is so lacking in integrity that at least 20% of 100 billion, according to Augustin Fu, 20 billion this year, it could be more, it could be twice that, is going to fraud. And that means the real publisher did not get paid for that fraud. The real publisher was out that money. So publishers are participating in a system that naively, sort of like the barter theory of money, they think, oh, this is just like the old days when Jude Wanamaker was selling his, department store wares through direct ad spaces he bought from the local newspaper. It's not like that. That's the direct model is great for the big publishers who can do it. But almost everyone, even the bigs to some extent, and everybody else totally is dependent on this automated system. And there's more to say about these ad exchanges. Not only do they get a fee, even if the fraudster is faking the site and faking the user, they get a fee if a malware vendor is faking the ad and putting it on real sites to get ransomware distributed. That happens too. So you have this perverse incentive system where the intermediaries get their fees whether or not the traffic is legitimate. Could be fake human traffic looking at real ads, could be fake ads going to real humans to take over their machines and ransom them for Bitcoin. So that's why the publishers are suffering. It's kind of a long story. It's one of those systems where if you approach it like from the sort of kindergarten book, Jude Wanamaker, department store, local Philadelphia newspaper model, you think, oh, it's all good. I know how this works. But you have to look at the actual system and how it evolved and realize how it depends on massive tracking, massive ad exchanges, too many intermediaries who have conflicts of interest with their principals and who take fees no matter what. And that's a recipe for fraud and abuse and low pay to the person at the end of the payment chain, which is the publisher.
Right. So what you're really saying is that it's a hugely inefficient system and there are different parts that affect different people. So it's poor for the users because they are ending up paying, their batteries are being drained and they are paying for data for all this tracking and all these adverts. It's poor for the publishers because they're not getting the right percentage of the revenue, and it's poor for advertisers because they are advertising to fake people or not advertising to the right people. So it's just a very inefficient marketplace.
I go further. It sounds inefficient is too kind, right? It is abusive, it is dangerous, and it is misleading. The degree to which fraud is tolerated is shocking. And some of these intermediaries go to trade shows and they talk among themselves on stage in panels, and they joke about how many fake ads they profited from, how many unviewable videos they took a fee delivering. I kid you not. I mean, it's really corrupt. It reminds me of The Big Short. You've probably seen the movie version, Michael Lewis's book, but it reminds me of the financial fraud that got us into the global financial crisis 10 years ago. So it's no laughing matter. It's not just a little inefficiency. It's a big inefficiency. It's moral hazard, and it's malware and fraud, criminal fraud. Yeah.
And I know about this industry. So I worked in it for 20 years. I had a digital advertising agency, and also I think you read one of my articles I sent you a while ago. I'm not sure if you remember. I wrote something called Online Advertising Does Not Work, and we spoke about it a while back. And there are
yes, I do remember that. Yes,
yeah. So I know about this industry, and I also think there are there's plenty of issues relating to the problem that the advertising industry has had adapting to the internet. And one of the things I noticed when working in the industry is the volume of lies having to be told to justify the advertising. So a couple of things I had major issues with was post impression tracking, which I felt was creating a network of coincidences, because people are seeing millions and millions of ads are being distributed every month, and there might be an absolute coincidence that you've bought something. The second is that retargeting, a lot of the ads were retargeting to people who'd already purchased items. And then the last one that I also took massive issue with, especially with Facebook, is with autoplay in videos and autoplay in adverts, because there's no choice. So the engagement is faked. So I know the model is broken, right? But at the same time, when you bring in an ad blocker, I guess, so you're completely cutting off the publisher. So do you feel like you're trying to force a new model onto the industry?
No, we're too small to, force it in the way that Google routinely forces new APIs and Facebook forces new, viewability, worse viewability standards on their audience. We're small, but what we're trying to do is, along with the rising tide of ad blocking usage, which is not going away on mobile too, through new browsers, because you cannot get an ad blocking extension for Chrome on Android. So you have to get a new browser anyway. So that's where Brave actually has the most shares on Android. And second place OS for us is Windows. Third place is iOS, which is surprising because Apple ties Safari in so well. Apple also makes an ad blocker app install model, content blocker, so-called, available. But we're not here just to block ads. We're not trying to burn the system down. Some of the purists I interact with occasionally think, and in their best days, make the case that the system is so rotten, you cannot reform it by building a cleaner version that doesn't have tracking. You have to burn it down, so you have to block everything and then see who survives and then start over. I don't agree, but I understand when they make that case that we're speculating about the future, and we've certainly seen past eras where civilizations, never mind technological systems like ad tech, failed. So to reform the system by taking the necessary parts that fund it, the user, the advertiser, and the publisher, and transposing them into a cleaner model that doesn't have tracking, doesn't have these layers of agents that have conflicts against their principles, and that take fees no matter what's going on, fraud or malware. That's our approach.
Right. Okay. And is ad blocking like antivirus? It's a constantly moving goalpost, and are publishers and advertisers trying to find new ways to trick essentially your shield so they can still have ads displayed?
Well, it certainly is, but all the big ad blockers and Brave collaborate on techniques, and so there's some cat and mouse there. But I would say it's better than antivirus in the sense that at the end, the browser determines the ground truth for what JavaScript means, what its semantics are when it runs. And that means that though the server might send you JavaScript that's obfuscated, they might use malware techniques to try to hide what they're doing from you so you can't block ads. They can't really do any better than that, and that's pretty weak. It means the browser wins in the end. There's a paper from Princeton from Arvind Narayanan and his students on this. It makes two cases with concrete work. One of them uses what in Chromium is called isolated worlds. So it posits that the publisher has put up an anti-ad blocker. We've seen these. They try to say, you're using an ad blocker. You must either lower your ad blocker shields or subscribe or go away. By the way, this is not productive for the publisher. Putting up these dialogues just reduces their Alexa score in my experience. But they do try. And in the paper from Arvind Narayanan, the first technique they use is they put that entire page in an isolated world from the one that you see. In the one that you see, they block everything and they defeat the ad blocker, the anti-ad blocker. We defeat anti-ad blockers too. So there's an iteration of cat and mouse that stops there with the browser winning. But the other world contains the entire anti-ad blocker thinking it won. And they can't tell any differently. So the browser can not only control the horizontal and vertical, it can put the remote content in the matrix. And as you recall, unless the agents change it and Neo sees the black cat twice, you don't really know you're in the matrix. Or remember in Ready Player One, to take a more recent movie, Sorrento is in his super chair, and he thinks he's out of the Oasis, but he's still in it. So you can play tricks on the remote content. It cannot really play tricks on you. It can just try to hide. It can try to obfuscate. There is a darker alternative called digital rights management, DRM, where video in particular tries to be not only obfuscated or encrypted, but you're not allowed to just get the key unless you pay, and you're not allowed to see the crypto system. It's hidden in hardware and software that if you even experiment with it or take it apart to look at it or try to fix the color balance because you have color blindness, you can go to jail. Now that shows that there is no technological solution here for ad blocking. Ad blocking can win. DRM can be defeated, and it is routinely, right? Movies show up on the darknet before they're even released to theaters. But because the Hollywood studios and others have such clout, they try to then pass laws with fairly pernicious side effects to criminalize hacking. So we're opposed to that, but we do not see that working for ads because the web, apart from HTML5 video, where sadly DRM was imposed by Netflix, Microsoft, and Google, with Apple going along with it. Ultimately, Mozilla had to go along, and ultimately Brave had to go along with it. We're all kind of complicit, but there's no alternative if people want their Netflix and their new movies. Apart from DRM HTML5 video, the web is an open standard system, and you cannot use these toxic laws to prevent ad blocking. In fact, ad blocking has good case law support. It's part of the user's right to use a reader mode like we have in Safari, and Brave has a super reader mode coming, or to use a screen reader if you're visually impaired that can turn text into speech. These are all aspects of the web where you can take apart the content, you can mash it up locally without violating copyright, you can strip out the ads, you can strip out parts of the content you don't want. That's all within the user's right, and it's part of the web standards by design, and it's well supported by case law. So, ad blocking and anti-ad blocking are arms racing, as you say, but I see, as Arvind Narayanan does, I didn't tell you the second technique in their paper. Second technique, how ads, sort of as a self-regulatory step, have usually an opt-out button in the corner. Sometimes it's ad choices or something like that. The second technique in their paper was to recognize, using very trivial sort of character recognition or computer vision if you need it, these buttons. And so therefore they can recognize ads visually. Now you have to load the ad and stuff for the tracking, but you can still take the ad out. So in the end, the browser, again, controls what the ground truth is in the sandbox where the JavaScript and the HTML run. And that means the browser can win in the end. And I think this leads to an armistice. It should lead to a better system that doesn't require the toxic tracking that leads to all the problems of intermediation I mentioned. That's better for users, better for publishers, and better for advertisers. And that's what we're trying to build. And there may be other approaches like ours. The pieces of what we do may go into the web standards. We're collaborating already in the W3C. So we're not out to corner the browser market. So therefore, I wouldn't say we're trying to force anybody. We're trying to lead by example and be part of a stubborn minority, what Taleb calls the intransigent minority that can tilt whole markets, and does, for very practical reasons. The common example is salt, which is halal and kosher, and it's only one SKU in every store. You don't have 3 kinds of salt for sale. So that's due to a minority. Certainly in the US, the people who want kosher salt or halal salt are minorities. But they insist on it, and the salt makers don't want to make 3 different kinds of salt and put them in 3 different places on the shelf. So that shows the minority effect. And I would say Firefox is an example of this. When we restarted the browser market with Firefox, we were growing at Internet Explorer's share. Chrome didn't exist. We had to show Google how to do it. And even at small share, Firefox was punching above its weight with web developers, something Chrome then did well with its dev tools. We were punching above our weight in the standards body. So minority effects matter, and they can tilt whole markets, combined with regulatory action, which is already upon us in Europe and elsewhere, like I said. I think there is a better world we can get to.
So next up, I talked more to Brendan about the problems with online advertising, and we also talk about the basic attention token. But before that, I have a message from my show sponsor, BlockFi. Need to make a payment but don't want to sell off your crypto? BlockFi can help. BlockFi is the leading crypto to USD lender in the US, servicing over 45 states. Use your crypto to do things like buy a car, pay off your credit card, or even pay your taxes. There's no need to buy tokens or pay a membership fee to get started. You can visit blockfi.com/whatbitcoin did to learn more about using your crypto without selling. They have a special offer for the listeners of my podcast. If you sign up at blockfi.com/whatbitcoin did, you can get $25 in free crypto added to customer collateral loans under $10,000, or $50 in free crypto added to customer collateral loans over $10,000, and applying takes less than 2 minutes. do you see a kind of irony that part of what you're doing is fighting against something you originally created?
Oh, we didn't know what we were doing. I've said this before. We did not know what we were doing. In the 90s, it was very fast. And Mark Andreessen in 1993 with Eric Bina, who did all the heavy coding in the Mosaic engine before they founded Netscape. Mark says, hey, we want to do images. And at this point, when he's announcing it to the www talk list, that Eric Bina's already coded it. It's not like, oh, this is a proposal. It's like, this is shipping tomorrow in Mosaic. And so they made the image element, which can be embedded so that the bits for the image, the encoded and compressed pixel information, transformed into some other domain, come from a different server. That's one of the legs of tracking. That's why that pixel, one by one pixel I mentioned, was the earliest kind of tracking element. Because the next year, 94, and Netscape 1, we once really did the cookie, as I said, to cache your authentication credentials or token from them. We didn't know, didn't think through the consequences of these innovations. I did JavaScript in 95, and I made the remote script, sort of like the image that could load a script from a different server and fold that code into your own first party, the including sites sort of trust domain. I made that work just like image, and I did it for the obvious reason. You need to include library code from a static server or an edge cache or something, another party, maybe even a safe stateless server for shared JavaScript libraries. So I did the obvious thing. We were all naively going fast, and we didn't see until maybe 96, I remember a conversation in Netscape about tracking cookies, that the combination of the image with its remote loading, which carries cookies, and the cookie, which was originally for the top page, for holding your login, could make tracking. And then it was too late to change at that point. So, I paid my dues for a lot of this in the technical committees, but I feel like this problem is bigger than any of us. We didn't see it coming, typical unintended consequences, and it's a system problem. So I think there's an economic aspect to it that should motivate many parties to improve it. But like I said, the big superpowers who won, it wasn't Microsoft, it was Google, which didn't exist in 95. That became sort of stuck in their high castles.
Right, okay. And what is your relationship like with the Silicon Valley behemoths, the Facebook and the Google? Because I noticed the Shield didn't block the adverts on Facebook or the advert search results in Google. Why is that? Well,
yeah, we have users who want that, and we may do it for various reasons as an option for those users. Those are first-party ads. I mentioned the Google search ads are, in some ways, like the Jude Wanamaker direct sold, department store goods ad in the newspaper. They're placed on the content that Google owns from Google servers. They don't actually track, given the other shields that we have. We protect you from third-party cookies and other tracking. We protect you from fingerprinting. So those search ads are actually fairly benign, and they're first-party ads. So we try to leave first-party ads alone in Brave as a policy, but it's not a super laser bright line. The best example might be, National Geographic has a sponsorship ad that's just a big image you can click on to donate to the World Wildlife Fund or something like that. First party ad, hard to object to if it doesn't have tracking. And if it has tracking and you use a browser like Brave, you're protected from that tracking, as you are everywhere. So those kind of first party ads, we try not to block. Those are the cleanest kind of ad. Often they're direct sold. Unfortunately, some of the direct sold ads that do make money, for instance, for the fashion site ELLE.com, while they're direct sold, they place using Google tags, Google server, and they have a click tracking partner to confirm that you watched the video in the carousel, and that partner is tracking users across the web for its own data profiling purposes. So we end up blocking that anyway. But the search ads are pretty clean. The Google search ads, Bing ads likewise. DuckDuckGo or Quant, our partner in France and Germany, same deal. Facebook ads in your feed are also first party. Now, they have had malware occasionally in the past. It's not been a huge problem. That's one reason why we might block them. Twitter promoted tweets. Everybody hates them. Just on opinionated browser aesthetic grounds and based on the majority of our users, we might block them, but we don't right now because they're first party. So I hope this first party, third party distinction helps. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have a super bright line around it because sometimes these direct sold first party ads are placed using third party techniques and they get blocked. They definitely get blocked.
Okay. All right. Well, look, let's talk about BAT. And this is probably where you face most of your challenges. I remember a long debate with Francis Poulier on Twitter that sparked me getting in touch to want to do this interview.
Oh, it wasn't that long.
It was a good one though. It was a nice fiery debate. So One of the things, the common threads that comes across with people I talk to in crypto, and I'm out at CryptoCon at the moment, I spoke to a few people here, and there's a common thread is, I love Brave, but I don't like BAT. Why do you think this has become such a problem for so many people?
Well, it's not a problem for our users. We're growing nicely because the crypto community that you're dealing with there is tiny and not growing fast. That's the God's truth. I have nothing against them. I run into maximalists, not just Francois, who got a little nasty by trying to summon regulators against us or some such, calling the cops from Twitter, which was pretty uncool and silly. But also, I know some Bitcoin maximalists I respect and like, but they tend to say, you should be using Bitcoin and you should make everyone take Bitcoin. And then you should not grow until that happens. And my answer is no, it's your job as maximalists to get the world to use Bitcoin. I'm making a better browser and I need to get some kind of tokens to flow. So don't shoot the messenger. The world is not switching to Bitcoin. We're paying over 23,000 publishers now every month. The biggest ones, the established ones, nobody in the legal, IT, or finance departments wants crypto. Doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin or BAT. They don't have anything against BAT. They don't want any crypto. They want fiat. And so through our partner Uphold, which manages settlement and KYC and all the rest the maximalists also hate, we're paying real businesses right now. We're pragmatists about this. And that means we have to deal with fiat because a lot of them want it. They will not take crypto. Now, there are creators coming on to our platform from YouTube especially who like that. And Uphold nicely lets them get that directly with no fee if they make that payment method, the default payment method for their account that's verified with us. So, we can do BAT, and we have people who like that. But if you're at anything like a Bitcoin conference, you're going to run into what I would say is another intransigent minority and not a fast-growing market, nothing generative for us that is against that because they want Bitcoin and only Bitcoin. And that's not in our users' interest or in most of our publishers' interests. We started with it, right? We had Bitcoin as a prototype, and it got very expensive. We had a Coinbase buy widget. People were buying small lots to give away every month out of their own goodwill. With the BAT, we can actually give them grants from our growth community. So there's an advantage that we have with BAT that just doesn't exist with Bitcoin. But be that as it may, if you believe people should only pay themselves for the crypto, it was still hard to buy. Now, I've had debates with maximalists who say, oh, you shouldn't have used Coinbase, or oh, those users are idiots. They should have bought larger lots of Bitcoin, and then they would have amortized the fees better. Or, oh, they should have used a smarter wallet to manage the fees. That's like saying average users, your grandparents, should become experts. It's not realistic. Again, it's sort of cultic. Maximalists tend, in the worst case, to be like cargo cultists. None of them among the fringe here, I'm not speaking of the ones I respect, but the ones I don't respect could have invented Bitcoin. But now that it exists, they make it into this sort of wicker statue that they worship, and they browbeat everybody else for not worshiping.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this podcast now for coming up to a year now, and I've had, a lot of interviews from Bitcoin maximalists to people who run projects like yourself, and I sympathize with a lot of the Bitcoin maximalism arguments, but don't agree entirely with it. But in reference to BAT, for example, you've said publishers don't want cryptocurrencies. So why use the BAT token at all? Why not take, say, the Patreon route and make everything payment in fiat?
Well, first of all, we're not requiring publishers to verify for users to start sending tokens toward their favorite creators. That's important because if you try to climb both the scaling wall of acquiring publishers and of acquiring users in tandem, so that every step of the way you need to bring users with their publishers and publishers with enough users to motivate the publisher, you will be in catch-22 the whole time. This has killed whole apps that tried to be like a better browser, like readable on iOS. Try to get curated or custom premium content from publishers of note, and they want to see big user numbers. The users want to see the custom content first. You're stuck. So we let users put tokens into escrow with Uphold. And if we did this with fiat, I don't think it could work, first of all. I don't think Uphold would do it. I think we would end up having to be some kind of a money transmitter ourselves. And we don't want to do that. We want to use crypto for what it's best at, which is peer-to-peer where possible, escrowed until then, and decouple the problem of scaling creators and scaling users from one another. We want to get users first, and we have enough users, which we do now. We already have publishers coming on board. We mentioned Dow Jones Media Group in April, and many more since then. Among the publishers who verified their domain ownership with us in order to collect their tokens, but did not otherwise do any kind of business development. It didn't require any pre-sales or sales effort from us, are like the Guardian, the Washington Post, Vice's verified Quartz is coming in. There are a bunch of these publishers who now see enough user scale that they're coming on. So our model really is different from the pure peer-to-peer payment model. But again, the maximalists assume that that's the future and then get angry at us for not building only that and either, cajoling our users to adopt it or, failing getting enough users to go out of business. I'm not prepared to do that. I think that's not productive for the world. I think we need different approaches that reach scale. And this pragmatism of getting to scale, I think it actually offends some maximalists. I think they would rather Bitcoin stay small and kind of clubby. And if the normies invaded it, it would be like AOL coming onto Usenet in the 90s, right? It would be bad. And it could be bad, certainly, for the technical culture. But if you want crypto to be widely adopted, it has to be usable by normal people. And normal people expect not only not to have to manage their private key of their wallet, which if they lose it, they're out their funds in the wallet. They have to be able to do a chargeback. Oh, you sent to the wrong address? Too bad. You've lost that crypto. With credit cards, it's trivial to charge back. It's so easy that the fraud costs get eaten by the merchants. So, and on top of the interchange charge. So there's no free lunch here, but the idea that everyone's going to adopt, peer-to-peer and manage their own wallets, especially with current tech, is ludicrous. We're growing outside of the crypto bubble, I would say. And that's why, and I mentioned earlier, decentralization is hard. Crypto is exciting, attracted a lot of investment. That's one of the other good functions besides censorship resistance. It's liberated capital toward projects that couldn't get into the old boys clubs of venture and private equity. I'm in favor of that too, even though there's a lot of nonsense projects and scam projects, and the regulators are rightly clamping down on those. But it's still a small world. Crypto's not going to go mainstream until it has the affordances people are used to from credit cards, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I wouldn't agree with you. We say maximalists want Bitcoin to remain small in a small club. I'm not sure that's true, but at the same time, there seems to be some kind of clash here between you have issues with cryptocurrencies related to Bitcoin, yet you are still using a cryptocurrency with BAT, and I feel there's like a conflict there. I would have thought a company like yourself, if you felt that publishers just wanted fiat, that you wouldn't struggle to build some kind of fiat-based system.
I noted earlier that some of our creators want BAT, so there is an interest in BAT per se. Some of them may want Bitcoin, and they can get that too through Uphold, which is just one exchange hop away, and there's a fee there, of course. But it's not that nobody wants Bitcoin. Obviously, some people do. It's just a small cohort. It's not growing fast. Some people want BAT. I would say that's not super growing, but it's a part of our publisher base that wants BAT. But the big publishers, the extant ones that we're trying to save from the depredations of programmatic advertising, they want fiat. And so we have a mix, but if we only used fiat, we couldn't satisfy the other people. And if we only used fiat, we would have to be a money services business. We would have to be a bank or partner with one in a way that I don't think banks will partner. They won't easily or at all do this kind of lightweight anonymous donation escrow service, for instance, that we rely on to decouple publisher growth from user growth. So, I'm telling a more complex story than the pure peer-to-peer story because the peer-to-peer story does not scale well. It has the usual Metcalfe's law problem that you have to get both ends of the connection. Both peers have to be using Bitcoin. And a lot of these businesses that were already paying, I mentioned the Washington Post, the Guardian, they're not going to do Bitcoin in any foreseeable schedule. Certainly not because of our 5 million and growing users. If we had 100 million users and we said you must use Bitcoin, well, we might get somewhere, but you can't get there from here except by doing what we're doing. So the token is well rationalized. It allows us to use blockchain for anonymity and peer-to-peer when we need it, which we do need sometimes, when we can't use the escrow ability. And it also allows us to have macroscopic auditability. When ads start flowing, the advertisers will pay retrospectively, actually. So we're going to use our growth pool to prime the pump. They'll pay into a funding wallet and there'll be a settlement wallet. There already is, which Uphold manages. And you can see these on the Ethereum blockchain, and you can see that we didn't take more of a fee than we said. We're not embezzling, which has been a problem in ad tech, as you know. There's been some scandals around the supply-side platform, so-called. A bunch of them were lying about their gross versus their net, and their publisher clients smoked them out and fired them because they were taking too much of a fee. We have to be very auditable. That's another advantage of blockchain. We'd like to make the user hold custody for 30 days. That allows them to change their mind about the anonymous donation mix and essentially repudiate ahead of time. And then once that commits, it's gone. It's not in their custody anymore. And it's a lightweight model because it's only $5 a month or $10, whatever the BAT equivalent in USD the user might prefer. And that can be done with crypto. It really can't be done with fiat only.
And have you released any kind of figures on what kind of revenue numbers that publishers are starting to make by coming onto your platform? Not yet. I think we're paying 23,000. We're paying over four figures. We're paying maybe, I haven't looked lately. 4 figures was what I saw not so long ago for one of the biggest monthly payouts to a publisher. So it's getting substantial, and as we grow, it'll only get more so. And this is a rolling stone. We hope to keep rolling and gathering. I think 4 figures for a major publisher, though, is probably way off what they would need to build a sustainable business.
Well, they're not. You can't assume that we're taking over their browser market. We're not. What we're doing is we're showing a found money effect. With just ad blockers, they get nothing. With us and a small number of users, remember 5 million users, but they're a property that not all our users go to. So maybe it's a few thousand of our users go there. Maybe it's only a few hundred. If it's a few $1,000s from a few hundred users, that's a very high monthly payout per user. And that's where some of our partners are coming on board and saying, let's do more. Because not just Dow Jones Media Group, but many publishers we're talking to and we've been talking to for years have moved from, I hate ad blocking, to realizing we're not in that old world category of ad blocking. By the way, the biggest ad blockers take fees to let ads through, which means they let tracking through. It's totally corrupt in my opinion. But we don't do that. We're not an ad blocker. We're not a browser. We're a new platform. And therefore, some of these publishers are saying, I need a new platform. I'm dying on Google's and Facebook's and any lesser ad exchange. I'm just going out of business slowly. I need to get to a model where customers pay me for premium products or pay by the yard instead of me trying to paywall them for $260 a year or $37 a month. Those paywalls do not convert well. First of all, the user has to be willing to risk the credit card to fraud and just do the credit card sign up, which is a huge friction, and rightly so, huge point of friction. And then they have to overpay. They have to cross-subsidize content they will never read or don't care to read. They can't buy articles with a few tokens per article. Whereas with that, they can do that. So we're talking to publishers who are now saying we need to get 2 streams of revenue, one from ads, which we're dying on, and one from a lightweight, low-friction user pays model. And that's where they're very interested in Brave and the Bat, because our lead users can, again, the stubborn minority effect, certain publishers that can help the publisher prove the model and recover revenue that they, with a pure ad blocker audience, would have never had. They go up from 0 to positive. They go up to multiple dollars per month per user, and then they want to scale that to all their users. So I'm going to tell a story about a site. You can guess which it is. It has 80 million ad blocking unique visitors per month. It has many more non-ad blocking, but it has a high ad blocking incidence. And they are ready to try something with us that would convert those ad blocker users, some of whom are using the corrupt ad blockers I just mentioned to take payola from Google to let ads through. They're ready to convert those users to Brave users. That's a big growth opportunity for us, but it's no joke for them, because if they do convert, we can use the batch from the user growth pool to pay them a referral award for every new user who comes and sticks around. We're doing that already. You can get a referral code, brave.com/refer. We will also give the users ongoing grants so they can give back to this site. And when the ad system, which we're in user trials right now on, starts performing, we can replace the grants with revenue shares from the ads, as we've been talking about from the beginning.
Yeah. So with those users making donations, right, it's almost a socialist kind of system of opt-in to choose to give money to content providers that you like. But realistically, a lot of that has come from grants. Have you released any numbers on the amount of people who are actually optionally choosing to buy BAT tokens every month from their own card through Uphold and distribute them versus those that have come from grants? Because it feels like...
No, we haven't, but I can say that we had like 90,000 users funding their wallets. We have over 413,000 wallets funded. Grants have made up the bulk of them. And that's because we do not expect users out of their own goodwill to open their wallet any more than these sites expect to have their macro paywalls convert you at $37 a month. Why should you have to put in, like Zuko of Zcash fame was putting $20 a month into his Brave wallet. Very good of him. Thank you, Zuko. No offense, but I do not expect, and my business plans do not count on all users doing that. That would be another minority effect, a valuable effect. Lead users who have discretionary income and send it toward their sites on purpose. That's hugely valuable. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it was never our plan to require everyone to donate. And it's not socialist in any sense. It's entirely voluntarist. But our model is more realistic in that currently everyone expects things to be free. Mark Zuckerberg even says so, right? This is why he rationalizes surveillance and ads, because otherwise, if he didn't have those systems, he'd have to charge for Facebook, and only the 10% or whatever could afford it. And isn't he nice? So in some sense, ads are more socialistic in that they certainly create a commons that is despoiled because it's not owned. It was kind of looted from the users without their consent, and that's their dossiers, their attention histories, and then it can be used for all sorts of bad purposes. So I would say what we're building is a more of a direct user or reader to publisher system, a direct advertiser to user system. And the directness is what matters. The indirection through the ad exchanges and demand-side platforms and so on and so forth, that's been the source of much woe. So getting back to direct relationships is good. By the way, the brands that we're talking to for ads that will pay the revenue that we share with the user, we give the user 70%. Those advertisers want the user a direct ad model because they are being commodified by Amazon mostly and similar marketplaces. So we're trying to get back to more of the direct model without the overhead of direct sales through the human handshake that I mentioned that happened 100 years ago and still happens, but only for the biggest publishers and brands.
And why did you implement a 6-month expiration on BAT tokens?
For the grants, we're giving them out, but we know that's a fraud magnet. So we know some people will claim them or have bots claim them and then send them to a verified YouTube account that we only want Uphold to prove it's a real payable entity. That Uphold does that for us. They do the bank-like AML, KYC, anti-sanction list, stuff that you have to do or you go to federal jail. Uphold does that for us for the YouTube site, but it still might be kind of a fake site with 2 videos that hardly anyone's watched. And yet we have found, as you might expect, because we're giving grants to browser users without any KYC on the browser user, that there's some fake browser users, some botted browser instances, or some Mechanical Turk type browser instances that have steered grants. They've taken grants from us and they've steered them toward such a musty and underviewed YouTube account. And we recognize that's fraud and we claw it back. And I know there are people on Reddit saying, I got some through fraud, or they're on the chans, they're on 4chan saying this. Sure, we let some through as we brought up our anti-fraud system, and we're happy to grow by giving grants to legitimate users who want to give them back. So there's always a risk somebody will get past our anti-fraud defenses, but we have to play the anti-fraud game. There's no way around it when you're giving out tokens or giving out revenue shares with the ads. That's also, a fraud magnet. Just like with ad tech today, the difference is ad tech today, there's no such thing as effective anti-fraud because it's all a mix of JavaScript on the publisher's page, and the anti-fraud scripts cannot tell which way is up. They're in the matrix. Whereas we can use native code in the browser. We can even put it in an SDK in a secure enclave on Intel or the equivalent on ARM. We can lock it down so we know it's not been tampered with. And because it's native code, it can read all the OS APIs to get all the sensor data on you as a real human using your browser without disclosing that to us. We don't track you, but locally it can make judgments about this is a real human, not a fraud bot. It's not an Android phone held in a vibrating rack with a robot finger tapping on it. Fraudsters have built such systems. But there's a cost to fraud in doing that. And if we raise the cost high enough, we get a very low fraud rate. And so does Google and Facebook. So do Google and Facebook on their native platforms. It's on the Wild West of publisher pages where Google is serving those double-click ads and direct sold ads. And there are 1,000 scripts competing for overwriting each other's idea of standard APIs. That's where you can't tell which way is up. That's where the anti-fraud scripts just fail. So we're playing the anti-fraud game, and that's, long story short, that's why we're timing out these grants. we do not want to have permanent fraud magnets hanging out there. We want our own anti-fraud system to forget about some of those 6-month-old grants and move on to newer grants, most of which go to legit users.
Okay. Well, listen, look, I'm conscious of time, and I know you've got to go on to another call shortly. I just wanted to make a final point, which you can comment on, is that, so I'm a content creator. I have a YouTube channel and a website, and I've been through the Brave experience and the BAT token experience. My biggest issue was the huge complexity of the UX and the amount of friction there was for me trying to create any or generate any revenue from my channels. Are you aware of that? And is that something you guys are working on?
Yeah, so I'd love to hear your experience in detail, now or later. I think we're in this high customer care mode, unlike the big companies, because we have to be. And I think it's the right way to roll in general. So I'd love to try to make it better. We're working on reducing friction for everybody. So when YouTubers come on, they onboard with Uphold quickly. But two-factor auth, I've heard of complaints. I don't know what burned you in particular, but I'd love to hear more details and fix it, because we're young. We're just starting, right? This is, people say, oh, you've only done a few thousand a month to one of your top publishers. Well, then forget you. Rome wasn't built in a day. We're here for the long haul, and we will go to scale, and we will make the friction as low as possible. So I'd love to, perhaps after the show, hear more details and make sure you get satisfaction.
Yeah, I mean, I can drop you a detailed email on my thoughts, because I like what you're
Thanks.
doing. I recognize the problem with the industry. I've written about it. I know there's a lot that should and could be done. There are things I would do differently, but I don't have your full experience. So let me drop you an email on that. We'll probably should do a follow-up at some point. And also, just to finish off, could you just tell people how to keep track of Brave, how to find out more about the BAT, and who you want to hear from?
Sure. And by the way, thanks for bearing with me here. A lot of this that I talked about, as anybody who listened closely can tell, is really not about crypto or blockchain per se. It's about a practical application in a certain domain. And that's where rubber meets the road. So, doing what we're doing has required thinking about the whole system. And so I appreciate the time to expound on that. Brave.com/download. You can actually get off the beta channel. If it's crashy, you should get on the stable channel now. Re-download from our main download page, brave.com. Which will take you to the Chromium front end for desktop. We're bringing the BAT to Android, so that'll take you to the App Store, Google Play Store, where you can get that. We even hopes to get the BAT on iOS because it's an approved virtual currency in the App Store, believe it or not. Uphold's app already uses BAT, and that got approved by Apple. So we're making headway where people thought it wasn't even possible. And if you want to read about Basic Attention Token, the Reddit is good. The site basicattentiontoken.org needs some new material, but we do blog and we co-blog on both brave.com and basicattentiontoken.org. And we blog every week. We have a bunch of interesting research projects coming, and we do have a much delayed roadmap update coming where we'll project some ideas, not try to pick the one direction to go over the horizon when there be dragons, but rather we'll try to lay out some ideas we think are worth investigating for the Apollo phase of our roadmap, which are more decentralized and may use more smart contracts, more advanced techniques, and I'll have more to say about that. So stay tuned to our blog. Thanks.
Fantastic. Okay, well, look, thanks for coming on, Brendan, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, so what did you make of that? Did you enjoy the interview with Brendan? I'm a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of the Brave browser. I think he's a great guy and a great thinker, and I know a bunch of people have an issue with the BAT token. I do myself. I wish they'd accept Bitcoin. I actually think they probably makes a lot more sense for them just to accept fiat, but whatever, we'll see how this plays out. But I am a big fan of the work they're doing. I think the browser is amazing. If you don't use it, you should definitely check it out. And also, look, there's an article in the show notes from Matthew Green about Chrome. I suggest you read that and have a think about your browser you're using and the data you're sending over to Google. Okay, so the new podcast is very near. I've mentioned this before. I think I'm going to be going with the name What Life Did. It's all about personal stories. It feels right. It feels like a good name. So yeah, that hopefully will be out in the next week if I can get it done. Okay, if you want to support the show, there's a whole bunch of things you can do. And I just want to say I'm grateful for everyone who's listened to these lists I put out every week and has made the decision to do any of this. So firstly, you can consider becoming a patron. I've got 30 now. I mean, that is so cool. So if you want to do that, you can head over to patreon.com/whatbitcoindid. If you want to become a show sponsor, you can reach out to me. You can email me on hello@whatbitcoindid.com. Downloads are growing every single month. I think I'm over 80k for October, and I reckon November I will crack 100k, which is pretty cool. So look, if you want to reach a new audience, drop me an email. We can have a talk about some ideas. Also, look, you can leave me a review on iTunes, or you can click on the subscribe button. If you think I deserve 5-star, that's very, very cool. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Medium, Twitter. My handle is @whatbitcoindid on everything. And if you reach out to me, I will most likely reply to you. You can check out my website. I've mentioned it before. It's www.whatbitcoindid.com. I'm doing work to it all the time, always trying to add cool resources. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, my brand new daily one, which I haven't done for a week. I'm really, really sorry. I was away. I was super busy. I could probably do with some help on this, but I am going to get it going again. I'm thinking of ways to make it a little bit more efficient. And lastly, you can share the show out with your friends and family. I see it every time it's shared out. That's so cool that every time you do it, I really, really do appreciate it. Okay, I think that's about everything. Listen, have a great week, and I will catch up with you all soon. Bye-bye.